The day I decided to divorce Diego was an utterly ordinary day. It snowed heavily that day. I had caught a bad cold and instinctively edged closer to Diego, holding the umbrella. Diego stared straight ahead without blinking. Yet the moment I leaned toward him, he subtly moved a few steps away. After we got home, I looked at myself in the mirror, covered in snow, looking utterly disheveled, with my mind foggy and unfocused. I made the most correct decision of my life. Diego, let's get a divorce. You're free. Chapter 01. The north wind roared head-on. The heavy snow struck my face like grains of sand. I felt a slight heat on my forehead and instinctively looked up. The large black umbrella stood perfectly above Diego's head. It barely covered the right half of my body. I quickly hooked my arm through Diego's and edged closer to him. The snow falling on me lessened. Diego frowned. He said nothing, but switched the hand holding the umbrella. The arm I had linked with him naturally dropped to his side. After only a few steps, we returned to the way we had been before. I looked at the snow accumulating on my left shoulder and stopped walking. Diego didn't notice and kept moving forward. Maybe he did notice, he just couldn't be bothered to wait for me. I turned around to look. There were few people on the street, so the 2 rows of footprints in the snow were especially clear. They ran parallel. At one moment, they suddenly drew closer. Soon after, they drifted apart again, returning to their original paths. Just like my life and Diego's, never meant to intersect in the first place. At that moment, I suddenly felt very tired. Diego, I called out. My voice quickly dissolved into the wind and snow. Only then did Diego seem to realize I was gone. A trace of impatience colored his expression. What's wrong with you now? What's wrong with you now? Why are you so slow? Why are you so stupid? I had heard words like these countless times during the 3 years I'd been with Diego. In the past, I would repeatedly reflect on whether I had really done something wrong. But today, my foggy brain left me no time for self-doubt. I said calmly, I caught a cold. Diego frowned, the irritation on his face deepening. You didn't even bother to keep yourself warm. And now you're telling me you've got a cold? Zoe, you're already an adult. Can't you take care of yourself? I'm not going to the hospital with you. After saying that, Diego turned as if to leave, but I grabbed him. I wasn't planning to ask you to go to the hospital with me. I have a cold, so I don't want to brave the snow to the restaurant you mentioned. And this umbrella is mine. Can you give it back to me? I want to go home. Diego's eyes turned cold. This was the sign he was about to get angry. In the past, at moments like this, I would soften my tone and coax him. But today, I simply looked at him quietly. Diego said nothing. He threw the umbrella onto the ground. I picked it up and walked step by step in the opposite direction. A cold, piercing gaze followed me from behind the entire time, but I did not turn back even once. Chapter 02. After I got home, my head felt like it was splitting apart. I could barely stand. I weakly held onto the doorframe. When I lifted my head, I saw myself in the mirror. The snow that had fallen on me had already melted. Almost half of my body was soaked. The little dress I had specially worn for this date was now blotched in dark and light patches. The loose strands of hair on my forehead clung messily to my face. The makeup on my face had long since smudged and fallen apart, revealing the pale complexion beneath, pale from illness. How pathetic. I reached out and touched the face in the mirror. Truly pathetic. That face once used to be filled with bright, radiant smiles. Zoe, how did you end up like this? Zoe, why would you let yourself become this pathetic for a man? I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. My phone vibrated. It was a message from my best friend Lily. She had sent me a photo. In the photo, Diego sat at a dining table in a tailored suit, gently placing food onto the plate of the woman sitting across from him. Beneath the photo was a 60-second voice message. Zoe, isn't that your husband? Didn't you say you were going on a date with him today? Why am I seeing him here at Century New City having dinner with another woman? That woman looks like she's a waitress at this restaurant. I couldn't hear the rest clearly. My eyes were locked on Diego in the photo. He looked at the woman across from him with tenderness, his gaze lingering, restrained yet affectionate. He looked nothing like the man who had sharply asked me just moments ago, "What's wrong with you now?" My foggy mind instantly cleared. I had thought the man who had always been emotionally dull had finally learned how to be romantic. After 2 years of marriage, Diego had finally decided to do something romantic. But it turned out he chose that restaurant not because of romance. He chose it because someone he wanted to see was there. So everything had just been my own wishful thinking. My eyes fell on the woman in the photo. She wore the restaurant's uniform, her face showing a mix of surprise and flustered delight. I didn't want to investigate what exactly her relationship with Diego was. If he was willing to brave the snow just to see her, what kind of relationship could it be? While my thoughts spiraled, Lily sent another photo. In this one, Diego, who had always been a clean freak, was holding a tissue, gently wiping sauce from the corner of the woman's mouth. This time, Lily didn't say anything, she only sent a question mark. My head began to ache again. I lay on the sofa and suddenly remembered something from a long time ago. It was when we had just gotten married. At a friend's birthday party, cake had been smeared everywhere. I pouted and asked Diego to wipe the cream off my face. With a look of disgust, he pulled a few tissues from his pocket and told me to wipe it myself. He had said something else too. What was it? My head hurt so badly, but I still remembered. He had said, "My car was just washed. If you don't clean the cream off yourself, then take a taxi home." That day, I crouched by the roadside cleaning myself for a long time. When I tried to get into the car, Diego pointed at my pant leg. There was still a small smudge of chocolate there. The early winter wind made me shiver uncontrollably. I cried and begged him to let me get in the car. I promised I would be careful and wouldn't get anything on it. Diego pressed his lips together. He said he respected my lifestyle habits and hoped I would respect his. So that night, even though I begged him by the roadside for a long time, even though we had only just gotten married, Diego still drove away without looking back. And now, the gentle movements Diego made in the photo felt like a hard slap across my face. It told me that Diego was not emotionally cold by nature. He was simply cold to me. Tears slid from my eyes and soon became unstoppable. I pushed myself up from the sofa. I tried desperately to find proof in our home that we had once loved each other. But there was nothing. In our wedding photos, Diego wore a stiff expression. Only I was smiling. The flowers on the balcony were always cared for by me. During a business trip, I had asked Diego to water them. When I returned, the jasmine plants that had once been covered in buds had all withered. The couple mugs we bought together were only used by me. As for Diego's, he said he had accidentally broken it. My hand holding the mug loosened slightly. Crash! The mug fell to the floor and shattered into pieces. Well then, mine was broken too. Just like my feelings for Diego all these years, shattered into pieces on this very day. Chapter 03. I took out my phone and found a friend of mine who works as a lawyer. I sent her several thousand yuan in a red envelope and asked her to help me draft a divorce agreement. Then I opened my chat window with Diego. It was almost laughable. All these years, afraid of missing any message from him, I had kept his chat pinned to the top. Yet the number of times he had taken the initiative to message me was countable on one hand. I unpinned the chat and, without hesitation, typed 3 words. Let's divorce. I waited for a while. There was no reply. That made sense. With a beauty in his arms right now, how could Diego possibly have time to respond to my message? I touched my forehead. It was still burning hot. After finding some fever medicine in the cabinet and swallowing it with cold water, I wrapped myself in the blanket and fell into a deep sleep. I slept groggily for a long time. When I woke up again, it was already the next morning. Perhaps the medicine was strong, or perhaps I had finally made up my mind to leave the man who constantly drained me emotionally. When I woke up that morning, I felt unexpectedly light all over. Even my nose was no longer congested. The house was messy. The umbrella I had tossed aside the night before was still lying on the floor. A puddle of water had formed beneath it. Diego must not have come home all night. It seemed he had a very enjoyable evening. I opened my phone. My friend had already drafted the divorce agreement. She had even added a fireworks emoji beneath it. So everyone had known that my marriage with Diego was unhappy. I let out a soft laugh. After thanking her, I called my boss and asked for a week off. I needed to say goodbye to my former self. After all, I had truly and sincerely loved Diego for many years. Chapter 04. After packing a few simple belongings, I boarded the nearest flight to Yun province. I had heard that in winter, large flocks of seagulls migrate there from faraway places. Before getting married, I had planned our honeymoon in Yun province, but Diego always said he was busy getting promoted to attending physician, busy performing surgeries. In his tightly scheduled life, I always seemed to come last, watching countless seagulls rise from the deep blue water, some flying in pairs and circling in the sky, one even landing at my feet. I let out a long breath. It felt as though all the exhaustion of these past years vanished in that moment. So this was what it felt like to live freely, without having to consider someone else's time and preferences. My phone suddenly rang, breaking the rare peace. Diego's name kept flashing on the screen. I frowned. To be honest, I had no desire to hear his voice at such a relaxed moment. But thinking about the divorce, I still answered the call. You want a divorce? Diego's voice was as cold as ever, as if he were discussing something trivial. I gave a soft mem. There was silence on the other end for a long time. Just as I was losing patience and about to hang up, a faint female voice came through. Diego, you should talk to Miss Zoe properly. Maybe there's some misunderstanding. For no particular reason, I was almost certain that this was the voice of the woman from the restaurant. I couldn't help but laugh softly. See? It wasn't that he was too busy to go on dates or eat out. He simply had plenty of time to accompany the woman he favored. The divorce agreement has already been drafted. I'll send it to you later, when you have time. Let's go to the Civil Affairs Bureau and get the certificate. I paused, then asked sarcastically, You're not so busy that you don't even have time to get a divorce, are you? There was anger in Diego's voice. Zoe, you. Unfortunately, before he could finish, I hung up and added his number to the blacklist. After all, I had no intention of hearing his unlucky voice or that woman's again in such a beautiful place. I spent a week in Yun province and only hurried back on the night before my leave ended. Chapter 05. I had just inserted the key into the lock when the sound of porcelain shattering suddenly came from inside. Then came a woman's startled cry, followed by a man's gentle voice offering comfort. I frowned. I didn't remember giving my key to any relatives or friends. Only Diego and I had keys to this door. It couldn't be that Diego had brought that woman home, could it? I turned the key and opened the door. When I saw the scene before me, the tightly knitted brows from moments ago suddenly relaxed. Well, it really was. I leaned against the doorway, smiling as I watched my husband carefully tend to another woman's wound. I had seen this woman before, the one Diego braved the snow to see at the restaurant. Ignoring my cold, the woman rested her head against Diego's shoulder and said gently, Diego, you're such a good person. As the distance between them grew closer and closer, just about to kiss, I cleared my throat at just the right moment. Excuse me, there's still someone here. So eager to start kissing in my house? Don't you even have money to book a room outside? Hearing my voice, Diego abruptly lifted his head. Almost instinctively, he pushed the woman leaning against him away. Zoe, you're back. Yes, if I hadn't come back, you two would probably have rolled straight onto the bed, wouldn't you? Fiona and I aren't what you think. As Diego spoke, he noticed the suitcase behind me, and a trace of grievance suddenly appeared in his eyes. I haven't even asked you, where have you been these past few days? I couldn't get through to you no matter how many times I called. Right, since you couldn't reach me, you just brought someone home? Fiona nervously grabbed Diego's arm, her eyes brimming with tears. She shook her head desperately as she explained to me. It's not like that. Miss Zoe, Diego and I are innocent. I have liver cancer and don't have enough money for hospitalization. He pitied me and let me stay here temporarily, as if touching a painful spot. Fiona's tears streamed down as she spoke. She looked heartbreakingly pitiful. Diego immediately shielded Fiona behind him and glared at me. Zoe, can you speak properly? I already said Fiona and I are innocent, and you're still being so aggressive with a personality like yours. No wonder your dad abandoned your mom back then. After Diego finished speaking, the room fell briefly silent. When I saw Diego shield Fiona behind him, I had felt a trace of discomfort, but now, I only felt disgust. Liking Diego had truly been disgusting. Diego flustered, trying to explain. I only stared at him coldly. Diego, this apartment was bought by my mom for me before we got married. You remember that, don't you? I was just angry just now. I didn't mean to say that. Zoe. Listen to me explain. Get out. What? Diego looked at me in disbelief. I looked straight into his eyes and said word by word. I said, get out. Miss Zoe. Diego really didn't mean it. Your husband and wife. Can't you talk things out calmly? When people are angry, they sometimes laugh for no reason. I turned to Fiona. You remember what you've been sending me these past few days, right? Shall I take it out and let everyone see now? Fiona immediately shrank back and didn't dare speak again, but the clothes she was wearing suddenly looked familiar to me. I went back to the bedroom and opened my wardrobe. Sure enough, it was in a complete mess. The new dress I had just bought was gone. Even the skincare products on my vanity were missing in large amounts, and many of my small accessories had disappeared. I rubbed my temples. When I looked at Diego again, my head throbbed painfully. You let her touch my things? Chapter 06. Diego pressed his lips tightly together. He didn't understand why I kept refusing to let Fiona off the hook. Now, seeing me look at Fiona as if she were a thief, Diego grew irritated and snapped. They're just a few clothes. Zoe, aren't you being a bit extreme today? I really have nothing going on with Fiona. I just pity her for having cancer and wanted to help her. Zoe, can't you show a little compassion? And what about this divorce talk? Back then, who was the one desperately chasing after me, insisting you liked me? Now that you've finally got me, are you just going to deny it? By the end, Diego's tone even carried a trace of grievance, but I had no interest in listening to his excuses. I took out my phone and waved it toward Fiona. The dress you're wearing, I bought it at the mall last week. The tag wasn't even removed. I still have the receipt. $3,700. And the other clothes and jewelry in the closet, the total value is over $10,000. That already meets the threshold for filing a criminal case. Miss Fiona, either return the money, or charges of unlawful entry and theft should be enough to keep you inside for a few days. Fiona's lips parted slightly. Tears streamed down her face as if they cost nothing. Almost instinctively, she grabbed Diego's arm and looked up at him with tearful eyes. Diego opened his mouth to speak. I raised my hand to stop him. And you think she's pitiful, so you use my house, my clothes, and my jewelry to pity her? Diego, how did I never realize you were this shameless? I took the divorce agreement out of my bag and threw it onto the table. This is my home. Sign the divorce agreement right now and take your little mistress with you and get out. Otherwise, by tomorrow morning, every hospital in this city will know that you're involved with a patient. I narrowed my eyes at Diego. Diego, aren't you about to be promoted to department chief? His expression changed. For the past 1 or 2 months, he had been busy preparing materials for his promotion. I didn't believe he would give that up so easily. Sure enough, after hesitating for a long time, Diego finally chose to leave with Fiona. Before stepping out the door, Diego softened his expression. His tone toward me even carried a rare hint of gentleness. Zoe, I know you might have misunderstood. It's fine. Let's separate for a few days. Calm down. I didn't think things through. I'll find Fiona another place to stay. As Diego prepared to leave with Fiona, I stretched out my hand to block them. Wait. Diego looked at me with sudden hope. Zoe, I knew you. I pointed at the divorce agreement on the table. You, sign it before you go. And you. I tilted my chin toward Fiona and opened the payment QR code on my phone. Cash or bank transfer? Fiona's face flushed red. She stood there awkwardly, unable to say a word. For some reason, in Diego's eyes, this scene once again turned into me bullying Fiona. As if out of spite, he signed his name on the divorce agreement. Then he angrily pulled me aside. You know she has no money. Why do you have to humiliate her like this? It's just a little over $10,000. I'll pay it for her. I shook my head. No, if you pay, it counts as marital property. I'd still be losing out. Then what exactly do you want? I looked up and suddenly remembered that afternoon 2 years ago. Diego had been sitting in the car, watching me crouch on the ground in the early winter night, wiping cream off myself in humiliation. His car was truly so precious. The corner of my lips lifted slightly. I want that car of yours, Zoe. The apartment and the savings are already yours in the divorce agreement. The car is the only thing left for me. Do you expect me to leave with nothing? I raised a finger. First, the apartment was my premarital property, on your own. You could never afford to buy one in Haicheng. Second, you're the one at fault. The fact that I even left you a car was me being kind. And lastly, I smiled as I looked at Fiona. You don't have to pay for her. Diego's face turned ashen, gritting his teeth. He handed me the car keys. Zoe, I never thought you were this kind of person. I jingled the car keys lightly in front of him. Goodbye, ex-husband. I'll be waiting at the Civil Affairs Bureau at 9 tomorrow morning. If you're busy, you don't have to come, but by then, your photos with this young lady might be plastered all over the hospital. Diego left with Fiona, his face full of resentment. I smiled as I watched their backs disappear. But the moment I closed the door, my body went limp and I slid down to the floor. From the age of 20 to 25. I loved Diego for 5 whole years. I chased him for 2. The moment he agreed to be with me, I thought I would love him forever. But how did the upright, radiant young man standing beneath the national flag back then become like this? Like this. Disgusting. I closed my eyes and wiped away the tears that slid down. Maybe the flag had shone too brightly back then, dazzling me for a moment. Or maybe the Diego I loved had always only existed in my imagination. But no matter what, it was all over now. I pushed myself up against the doorframe, looking at the familiar yet strangely unfamiliar interior. The air still seemed to carry the pungent scent of perfume. This apartment, it felt tainted. I contacted the real estate agent I had added before and asked him to help me sell this place. Glancing at the car keys I had casually tossed aside, I added one more request, for him to contact a car broker as well. I had another car to sell. Chapter 07. The thought that strangers had slept in my bed, that Diego and Fiona might even have rolled around on it, sent a chill down my spine. I carefully looked around the house. There was truly nothing worth keeping, so I dragged my suitcase to a hotel and stayed there for the night. At 9 the next morning, I arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau on time. Diego sat on a chair, looking dejected. When he saw me, his eyes lit up. Zoe, listen to me. Things really aren't what you think. I asked Lily yesterday. I know about the photos. Zoe, I can explain. Diego grabbed me and began recounting everything in one breath. In short, Fiona was an orphan. She had just graduated this year when she was diagnosed with this illness. The company that had planned to hire her broke their contract. Fortunately, her liver cancer was at a mid-stage, and there was still hope for recovery. But the treatment was expensive. He pitied her, so he introduced her to a job as a waitress at a restaurant. That day, he just thought Fiona looked too exhausted and wanted her to rest for a while, so he invited her to eat with him. As for letting Fiona move into the house, that was an even bigger misunderstanding. Fiona had been kicked out by her landlord for not being able to pay rent and had nowhere to go. Diego happened to run into her and brought her home for a few days. Who knew I would walk in at exactly that moment? Diego finished his long explanation in one breath. Then he looked at me expectantly. Zoe, I've explained everything. It's all just a misunderstanding. I only paid more attention to Fiona because I felt sorry for her getting sick at such a young age. Now you can rest assured, right? I let out a cold laugh and opened Fiona's chat window on my phone. A misunderstanding? So you two lying naked in the same bed was also a misunderstanding? You hugging her without clothes on was out of pity too? Diego's face turned pale. He snatched the phone from my hand and scrolled through it frantically. Fiona had added me a week ago, which meant that the second day after I left, Diego had already brought her home. In the chat history, Fiona hadn't said a single word. There were only photos. Some were of Diego cooking in the kitchen. Some were of him sitting on the sofa playing with his phone. The last photo was taken in my bed. Both of them were naked. Diego was asleep. Fiona lay in his arms, flashing a V sign at the camera. Diego's lips trembled. And no, it's not like that. Listen to me. Fine, I'll listen. I took back my phone and sat down across from him. That night was an accident. Fiona said she was very scared, afraid her illness wouldn't be cured. We had a few drinks. And then you rolled into bed? I found it increasingly ridiculous. Diego, Fiona has liver cancer, right? And you're drinking alcohol? Diego shut his eyes in pain. She was crying so hard. I felt soft-hearted and, Diego, you say you pity her for being sick. But I've been back for so long. Did you ever once ask if my cold got better? You said you couldn't reach me, but how did you manage to reach Lily just now? And one more thing. I smiled and took a stack of printed photos from my bag, placing them on the table. Out of all the patients in the world, you don't pity them, you just happen to pity a freshly graduated female college student. Dr. Diego, should I go to your hospital and ask your director if he believes that excuse? Diego stared at the stack of intimate photos of him and Fiona in bed. His lips trembled. After a long while, he closed his eyes and said painfully, Zoe, do we really have to do this? Don't you love me? Do you have to ruin my reputation to be satisfied? I calmly put the photos back into my bag and stood up. Stop talking nonsense. Let's go. Finish the paperwork. I still have to go to work later. Diego followed behind me like a lost soul. The divorce process went smoothly. After filling out the divorce application, the staff told us to come back in 30 days. Before leaving, I pointed at my bag and reminded him. 1 month from now, don't forget. Diego pressed his lips together without saying a word. I didn't bother looking at him again and turned to leave. Chapter 08. The apartment had already been listed with an agent, but I forgot to retrieve the key from Diego, so I simply changed the locks, packed my things, and moved in with Lily. When Lily found out I was divorcing Diego, she practically jumped 3 feet into the air. She was just short of opening champagne to celebrate. I really don't know what kind of love potion that Diego fed you back then. Sometimes even I couldn't stand watching it. I tried to persuade you so many times, but you just wouldn't listen. Sigh. Lily sighed as she spoke, but seeing that I didn't look heartbroken, she leaned closer to me with a mysterious smile. Have you really let go? I nodded. I've really let go. Lily looked at me and grinned mischievously. They treated you like that, and you're just going to divorce him and call it a day? I've got a few connections. I understood what she meant almost instantly. I gave her a reassuring look. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. A month passed quickly, perhaps knowing there was no turning back. On the morning we went to collect the divorce certificate, Diego remained calm the whole time. It wasn't until the red booklet was in his hands that he finally spoke in a subdued tone. Zoe, we're divorced now. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other. His voice even carried a trace of choking emotion. For the sake of the years we spent together, don't make things difficult for Fiona and me anymore. I raised an eyebrow. I didn't reply. When I turned my head, I saw Fiona standing uneasily at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. In just 1 month, she seemed thinner. Her face was pale as paper. Seeing her, Diego hurried over and pulled Fiona into his arms, softly comforting her, as if suddenly remembering that I was still there. His body stiffened. The hand resting on Fiona's shoulder didn't know whether to withdraw or remain. I let out a faint laugh and didn't spare them another glance before walking away. Chapter 09. That very night, I heard that when Diego brought Fiona home, they ran into a group of hooligans. Diego tried to fight 5 of them alone to protect Fiona. He ended up beaten black and blue, and Fiona could only hide behind a trash can, crying and shouting. Stop hitting him! Please stop hitting him! Watching the videos and photos sent by Lily's connections, Lily and I exchanged a knowing smile. My gaze fell on the familiar necklace around Fiona's neck. I curved my lips slightly. Don't rush. It's not over yet. Chapter 10. The next time I saw Diego was downstairs at my company. He sat by the flower bed, looking utterly disheveled. The moment he saw me, he rushed forward and demanded, Zoe, was it you? I shot him a confused glance and turned to leave, but Diego grabbed me, his eyes fierce. Someone filed a complaint against me at the hospital, accusing me of malpractice that worsened a patient's condition, and even sexual misconduct toward a patient. That's complete nonsense. Zoe, it was you, wasn't it? You're getting revenge on me. I stopped walking, the corner of my lips curling into a mocking smile. So what? Why would you think it was me? Why? Diego roared and grabbed me by the throat. Because of your complaint, I can't get promoted to attending physician. I've even been suspended for investigation. Do you know that? You wanted a divorce. I agreed. I even agreed to leave with nothing. What more do you want from me? Zoe, more than 10 years of my hard work have been ruined by you. He was completely hysterical, his hands tightening around my neck. Fortunately, it was rush hour. Many people were coming and going outside the company. Soon, several people rushed over and pulled us apart. The suffocating pressure still lingered on my throat. Furious, I rushed forward and slapped Diego hard several times. Are you insane? You just said it was a patient who complained about your malpractice. Then go find the patient. Why are you coming to me? How would I even know which patients you treated? Even after saying that, I still wasn't satisfied. I punched and kicked him several times, but after hearing my words, Diego's expression dimmed. He kept repeating softly, a patient. It was a patient. The people around us looked at one another. Seeing that Diego had calmed down, those holding him gradually let go. But Diego looked like a man who had lost his soul. Head lowered, he kept murmuring, a patient. It was her. I shook my head as I watched his retreating figure. It doesn't feel good to be hurt by the person closest to you, does it? When I got home, I opened the video sent by the private investigator. In the video, Diego's emotions seemed calmer. He went to the market and bought a lot of groceries. After returning home, he began cooking. When I saw the dishes Diego made, I couldn't help frowning. They were all greasy and spicy foods he loved. But for a liver cancer patient like Fiona, were they really appropriate? Diego didn't seem to notice anything wrong until Fiona returned from work. His behavior remained normal. At the dinner table, Diego casually mentioned that he had been dismissed from the hospital. Fiona's expression flickered with panic, but she quickly composed herself. She gently comforted him. Suddenly, Diego broke into a wide smile. Fiona, didn't you say chemotherapy was too expensive? Now that I've been suspended and my savings were divided with Zoe, aren't you afraid you won't have money for treatment? Fiona's face stiffened for a split second before she threw herself into Diego's arms, choking with emotion. It doesn't matter, Diego. As long as I can be with you, I'd even be willing to die. Is that so? Diego gently stroked her hair. They exchanged more affectionate gestures. After dinner, Fiona went to take a shower. Diego sat on the sofa, seemingly lost in thought. After a long while, he slowly picked up Fiona's phone. He scrolled through it for a long time. Then he went into the kitchen and picked up a kitchen knife. The video ended there. The private investigator said that when he saw Diego crouching outside the bathroom door with the knife, he called the police immediately. Fiona was severely injured and hospitalized, and Diego had already been taken back to the police station. Chapter 11. I turned off my phone and felt my whole body relax. Diego was right about one thing. I was taking revenge on him. From the stack of hospital bills Fiona had left in my room, I had figured out that Diego had been covering her medical expenses from the very beginning. Medication cost money. Chemotherapy cost money. Before the divorce, Diego still had savings to burn through. But after the divorce, his salary alone was nowhere near enough to sustain Fiona's treatment. So I gave Fiona 500,000 yuan and told her to anonymously report Diego. At first, she refused, but when she realized her condition was gradually worsening, she suddenly agreed. Perhaps she had finally realized something too. Diego had no real medical ethics. He never told her to avoid certain foods. Sometimes he even urged her to drink a few glasses, calling it more romantic. Fiona's mid-stage liver cancer had been delayed by Diego until it progressed into mid to late stage. And yet, in the beginning, Fiona had approached Diego for one reason only, to cure her illness. So she reported him without hesitation. At first, I only wanted Diego to lose his job. I never expected things would end like this. I let out a soft sigh. I suppose evil eventually meets its own retribution. Chapter 12. In the end, Fiona still died on the operating table. Diego was sentenced to death for attempted murder. Before the sentence was carried out, Diego said he wanted to see me one last time. I didn't go. I could almost guess what he would say. Nothing more than meaningless words like I know I was wrong or I regret it. But why should I waste any more time on someone who wasn't worth it? I had already wasted 5 years on Diego. From now on, I would live for myself.